like Google, I think, to get into auction-style buying models for media, remnant media and indeed premium media. And we believe there's a role for that. However, we do also believe that for most clients who want to remain in some way distinctive, there's a role for added value planning and added value approaches. In these scenarios, it's important that the agency of the future has the scale and the ability to forge partnerships across media and across content sources, whether traditional or non-traditional, across platforms and devices. This is going to be more important than ever before. So we have to break new ground. I mean, in Mindshare's case, it's campaigns like Ugly Betty in China or Ford Bite in the United States or In the Motherhood in the USA as well. But I've got to say, I mean, I've trawled through all of our global examples, and there's nowhere better than we innovate than we do in India. So I wanted to show one quick example from PEPSI, which was, I think, an interesting way of using TV. So can we use the first video, please?
Shut up! नजर सामने है, पैर हिया, अब कस के पकड़ जम के जकड़ लगा, समझे? चलो करो. कस के पकड़ जम के जकड़ लगा, कस के पकड़ लगा और जम के जकड़ लगा. बहुत बढ़िया. अब वहाँ पे भी ऐसे ही करना है. कस के पकड़ जम के जकड़ लगा, लगा और लगा. The official sponsor of
the helicopter shot.
So you know that campaign is basically using it in a kind of interactive sense. I was going to use the example we made with Kevin Peterson, but I thought by the time I showed it he might well be dropped from the England team the way he's batting, so I thought, given the audience, we should concentrate on Dhoni instead. He won't be dropped, sadly. So data first and then innovation. The third attribute, which I think we'll all have to have if we want to be Agency of the Year in 2016, is an attitude of collaboration. Because again, my belief is that one agency can take a leadership role in managing all of this client's complicated ecosystem. Again, no single agency will be able to execute everything on the plan. So a future agency will need to have an open and collaborative approach to integrating and working with the other agencies. This should extend beyond other agencies because it must include the whole ecosystem, including media owners and consumers. I'll give you an example here where we work closely with a media owner. This is an example of a bank in the UK where they went to a design show and took some technology. In fact, in this case, it was from Microsoft, which allowed the public in the show to react directly with the walls of the show. This is for a bank, and it was about how they literally in real time use Microsoft technology, backed by Microsoft, to buy mortgages and remortgage their properties. We couldn't have pulled that off without Microsoft. So I think that, again, a collaborative approach, bringing technology providers, media owners and consumers into the mix is certainly the way forward. So collaboration is the third dynamic. The fourth, I think, is digital. We've heard a lot about digital already, but our future agency will need to be integrated, but with a strong foundation in digital, given its predominance around the world now. Brands will need agencies who can best combine offline and online, paid, owned, earned media. Philosophically, this is quite tricky for the agencies because it means that we've got to rewire some of our instincts and some of our history to reflect the experience and learning from digital. I mean, for example, given the future importance of search across devices, we'll need to think more about pull marketing rather than just push marketing. Addressability across devices will require a strong understanding of behavioural targeting as well as the new emerging areas and media exchanges. Finally, and kind of obviously, we do believe that mobile will be more important than ever as it becomes the primary device to access the internet, especially in markets like India. And again, I'll repeat my phrase from before. I think this thing about mobile, which has been discussed for many years but not really yet bitten, nevertheless, I do believe that direction of change is clear, the pace of change perhaps a little bit more debatable. The fifth attribute is to understand the new kind of commercial realities that we live in. digital has brought massive changes in the commercial models being behind content. I mean, for example, as we said before, the music industry has now been totally transformed by things like iTunes and Spotify. And we expect to see even more innovative commercial models in the future as brands and media owners explore new ways of meeting consumer needs. Brands, I think, will play a more important role, for example, in sponsoring content, whether free music or films or utilities or news or whatever it might be, in exchange for advertising or messages being delivered. Consequently, what this means for the media for the Agency of the Year in 2016 is that agency has to have the scale and ability to negotiate, to execute and to manage those kind of ongoing programs. So that's 5 out of 6 so far: data, innovation, collaboration, digital and commercial. The 6th one is technology, obviously. The Agency of the Year in 2016 will need to have absolutely cutting-edge, innovative technology to manage an increasingly complex environment. All the holding company groups have been investing in technology. We certainly have, to give us a much better understanding and to build this infrastructure for a digital future. I mean, for example, in the area of digital television, we've invested in addressable and dynamic advertising technology such as NVIDIA. We're also actively involved in the testing of new emerging digital TV platforms, like Sky AdSmart. We've invested in new mobile technologies. We've acquired technologies like 24/7 that give us real-time abilities to follow viewing behaviours. Again, I think if agencies, someone asked me before in the coffee break, what is the business model that drives agencies to invest in this kind of technology? Well, the fact is, if we don't get more consumer insights through technology like this, then we will run the risk of being simply transactional providers. And I think this agency, the Agency of the Future, needs to be big, and it needs to be practical. This is the mouse. Steve Jobs stole the idea of the mouse from the engineers, the theoreticians, the theorists at Xerox. But the thing was that the guys at Xerox, their mouse was retailing out at $300 per unit. It had 3 buttons and a rollerball. Jobs looked at it as a piece of design, an enabling, practical piece of technology, which he retailed out at $15. Guess who won? So I think, okay for the theory, okay for the creativity, but I think we also have to be deeply, deeply, deeply practical in what we deliver to our clients. And 7th and last, for the Agency of the Future, I do think it needs to be global, and I mean properly global, because the thing is, the new ecosystem is global. It doesn't recognise national boundaries. And by global, I mean really global, really linked, not just a map with dots on it saying where you have agencies, but really, really, really linked. And linked not just with star players, or not just by star players, but by teams. Teams populated by star players, but teams. Because again, one of the questions that was sort of put to me was, what kind of talent will reside in these agencies? And the fact is, I think it's a very diverse talent pool. And the teams will be, from scientists all the way through to artists via all sorts of specialists. But they have to be linked. I don't think the Agency of the Future, the Agency of the Year in 2016, will have much room for silos. And I also think that we have to, in this global community, move a lot of our thinking and a lot of our NPD to this part of the world and other developing nations. I do think that far too much of what we develop, and I think Mindshare is as guilty of this as anybody else, is far too stuck in London and New York. And I think a lot of people in London and New York, or I use that as an approximation for the West, if you like, just don't have a big enough understanding of really what happens in the more developing nations, such as India and China and Brazil and the future. So I do think we'll have to move our talent more easily around the world. So that's the plan in a way, and I think it's not just a plan for a kind of glorious future for 2016. I also think it's a plan for the next recession. Because there's no doubt that a sort of diversified agency, such as the one I described, with lots of different revenue streams, is going to be the way forward, because that's the thing that helps mitigate against recessions in the future. If you take the last recession, I mean, for us, for example, whilst the US and especially Western Europe took a real battering, the fact that we still have, thank God, a wonderful global spread, including India and China and all the developing markets of Southeast Asia and Latin America, that saw us through. That was our plan B. So when the next recession hits, we need to still have strength in those economies as in the last. And by the way, the recession hasn't yet finished in those markets. If you look at Western Europe, and you all see the news and read the newspapers, you'll see markets like Spain and Portugal and Greece and Ireland they're falling off the cliff. Just yesterday, the Italian Senate passed a bill which will allow them to regenerate their economy to the tune of $60 billion. Now, whether the politicians in Italy can actually achieve that, I don't know, but if they can't, which I suspect they won't, then they'll come knocking on the door of the IMF. Look at America. Again, if you saw the news this morning, I looked at the news this morning, there's this ridiculous kind of debate going on between the parties over there in the Senate and in the Congress yesterday, where they're fighting each other about the best way through this recession, whilst tens of thousands of people a day are losing their jobs. So, if we think the American economy is out of the woods, well, I'll tell you what, it isn't. Okay, so the plan I'm talking about, the way I'm thinking about regenerating the agency, is not just to plan for the future in 2016, but it's also to mitigate the recession, which is still with us and may well linger. So that's for agencies. What about clients and brands? Well, I think for clients, and I'll be brief now, but if the recession was all about managing the bottom line, then brave clients, the challenge for clients post-recession is getting back into driving top-line growth. Clients will, of course, still continue to seek value, and the kind of procurement thing will not go away because they want to avoid costs. Why not? But I think those who do actively allow us to move with them towards this new world of paid, owned, earned, or whichever vocabulary you want to use, will be those that succeed. I think they will, and Nitin sort of referred to this a little bit, they will show more focus on the consumer and the consumer benefit and less about the brand. I think the concentration will be more about the consumer than the brand. This will require clients, by the way, to kind of listen more, to track more, to measure more. It's quite a brave thing. They've got to be more agile about producing less content and more about better distribution of that content. The post-recession world will enable clients to move away from the short-term cost-cutting bottom line to focus more on a strategic long-term vision, etc., but only if they recognise, as Nitin appeared to do, that these messages can come from anywhere, really. And it's not for him anymore to produce the 30-second commercial. It's for him, with our help and your help, to corral all the messages that are out there anyway, to get messages about the brands which have been produced by other people and put them into places which we don't earn. So that's kind of scary, but that's what it is. And it's a multi-speed world. When you look at India or, China, Brazil certainly, those consumers, the emerging middle classes, are looking for different things than someone in Spain or Portugal or Greece or Italy, because, the first group is looking for brand and quality, and the second group is still very much looking for cost, and accountability and certainty. There are different. So I guess the point I'm making is that there's been a lot written recently about the emergence of global brands and global brand management, but our belief is that there will be a multi-speed thing going on here, and I think the agency of the year in 2016 will recognise that one size, absolutely does not fit all. For media owners, for sure, there's a greater need to monetize content. Now, content is still king, but it does face the kind of curse of free stuff out there. Putting it another way, content is still very much valued, but it has become far less valuable, right? So the challenge for media owners, of course, in this kind of post-recessionary world, is to find new monetization models, whether advertising or subscription or whatever it might be, to